but you're saying change the conversation to, that's a capability I don't have. I should say yes to that opportunity. And it frames it from, okay, stay in my comfort zone to, if I want to grow, I got to pull myself out to some new capabilities. 2 months ago, you were telling me all this stuff you did in your internship. That's your story. Help students realize they've created a story. Yeah, it definitely feels like the road less traveled, and that's okay. And you're very right. Thank you for saying that students need to see that I didn't have it all planned out. Or if I did, well, I can name 5 things that happened that I had to throw the plan away. But that doesn't mean you still don't move forward with things. Because engineering is about possibility and potential. Engineering is empowering for us to do what we want to achieve. The things that we create empower other people. How do you not love that?
Welcome back to the Engineering Career Podcast. This is a really exciting episode. Today I am joined by none other than an immediate past president of the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, and one of the oldest, most respected engineering institutions in the world, with roots that go way back in engineering to the Industrial Revolution and the age of steam, which I've got connections with personally and through family. So this is really, really exciting. Susan, who joins me today, is someone that I've been connected with for the last few months and someone who I'm inspired to have on the podcast. So Susan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Josh. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for reaching out and asking me to join you. I look forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Susan. So let's jump straight in. What sparked your interest in engineering?
My grandfather, actually. He was a mechanical engineer, and he never doubted that I was going to follow in his footsteps. We would have some great conversations. He was a very practical guy. He actually had a list of, life things everybody should know how to do. And he would go to situations and it was just like, all right, what do we got? Where do we need to go? How do we get there? And so that logic really set me on my path. And I was a math and science kid anyway. So when you're a math and science kid and then you got a grandfather who's like, well, of course you're doing this. You find yourself in engineering school, and I loved it and haven't looked back.
Excellent. And it was Princeton you went to for your undergraduate?
For my undergrad, yes.
Yeah. Not a bad start.
Not a bad start, exactly. It is a really dynamic place, and it was an engineering school in a liberal arts school. And I think that's a really interesting combination. I actually later taught when I was at Hope College in Michigan, same thing, an engineering department in a liberal arts school that provides what you need as an engineering department, but then stretches the rest of your brain a little bit. And I think that really shaped who I am.
Yeah, everyone's journey into engineering is different. Some don't do university, some do college, some do apprenticeships. But even those who go to university, I think, always love to hear the stories of those who went to different universities and learn in their own way. So what was university like for you as an aspiring engineer at the time? What was it actually like as a student?
Yeah, I was probably similar to everyone else. Engineering programs are intense for everybody. I don't think it matters where you go. You're there, you're trying to get a lot of pieces. And I remember so much of just the lab work with everybody. Like these years later, what I just remember is how we all had to get through it together. It was a team sport of that. I can picture us all in engineering labs and sitting in classes going, what is this professor talking about? Or wait, we got this. And all that fun stuff of back and forth that you learn as engineers. So I have good memories of it. I mean, we all had some really crazy semesters, but good memories of just being in the lab, seeing what it meant, and confirming that that's why we're engineers, because we wanted to be in there and in the lab and making things.
And when did it start to become real for you in terms of taking a lot of the theoretical, you do work within labs and tutorials, etc. But when did it become real for you in terms of, with that link with industry?
So I really liked control systems. Haven't really done that as it's paid to do that, but in college I really liked that. And to me, that was the link that allowed me to see, okay, you're putting all this theoretical stuff. Oh, wait, I can programming controls. I can program something and a robot moves or another process goes from there. And that part of the study made that connection for me of, okay, all these things in the classroom was going to do something. And then I'm a fan of internships, whether you're 4-year, 2-year, that's the whole purpose of apprenticeships. Students need to get out there and be doing and seeing what it's like. Schools do an amazing job trying to create their labs and have you there, but you got to get into industry. And I was really lucky to get internships with General Motors, where they threw us into different situations and out of the proving grounds and seeing what the vehicles were doing. And that's the importance of that for students. They've got to get out, they've got to see all that. And that's a tie for industry as well, not just hiring everyone, but when they're students, are they helping to make that connection for them?
Yeah, I think a lot of the time, certainly within the UK, the hurdles around bringing students into the workplace is time. Sometimes it can be cost, given maybe a smaller organisation doesn't have that disposable, cash to be able to support paid work. Is there any advice or anything that you would say could be done that would help us bring more students into industry quicker? Because it's something I champion hugely through engineering career.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you're championing it. And I think those are universal questions. I don't think those are questions that are unique to any place, because industry has its purpose and it's off and running, and it has to get its production at the end of the line. And it does take some time to have someone at the company who is looking out for the interns and saying, okay, how do we craft this? How do we fit this in? Because you're right, we can all tell stories of positive experiences and negative experiences that students have had. But it does take someone at the company who says, you know what, this is important. And usually it takes someone higher up to say, all right, we got to figure out how to make this happen. And when you put those resources together, you can start carving out those pieces of what interns can do. I mean, I tested a lot of windshield glass. And that may not sound as exciting, but for a student to actually be saying, oh, wait, I'm collecting data that you're going to use. That's all I needed to know, actually, as a student. I needed to know that what you were asking me to do, someone's taken that data and it's a piece of what's going to move forward. So I think for industry, I know I was teaching at the colleges and we work with them for internships. We said, look, just find a piece of something where you can say, this study needs to be done. Here's the connection. And then let the students be part of meetings and discussions. Don't lock them in the lab to break all their glass. Let them come in and hear the design reviews and see what's happening. I even went on a ride at the proving rides for General Motors. I still remember that. I was definitely the lackey who was running around just making sure it all worked. But to see what that meant to do a test drive is huge. So I think if industry has that commitment to go out and do that. And then the other piece that really works is building those relationships. And I know you're a large part of doing that, of that relationship between industry and the college. And whether it's in inviting an industry member to be on an advisory council and having mutual tours back and forth, the more they see each other as humans trying to help these students get to the next level, then they're much more willing to say, all right, we can figure this out.
Yeah. I think to the student, it can seem quite a scary place when you haven't been in it. And then when you realise when you're in it, it's actually just a normal environment with professionals at work. You mentioned there in terms of a simple example of a project or a piece of work that you might do as a student. That simple bit of work can be invaluable for the learning outcomes of the student. I think back to myself, I remember my first internship and I remember doing ovality tests on pipework that was being formed, and it was my actual role in it was very minimal, but taking the data. I wasn't doing the forming, I wasn't doing the testing, but I was taking the data out of it and then analysing the data. And that type of practical experience that you can then build a story around to say how you fit in it provides so much context for interviews, for the conversations you have at events, for that networking, and it just creates so much life to what otherwise sometimes can feel like I go and do lectures and I pass exams.
Exactly. And I love that example that you gave, that you turn that into stories for interviews. And I think that's part of us helping students know that they can do that, because I remember students would say to me, yeah, but what do I go in and say? I haven't actually done anything. I'm like, wait a minute, 2 months ago, you were telling me all this stuff you did in your internship. That's your story. Help the students realize they've created a story. And it's very true.
One of the things that we all have to champion, those that are outside of being a student now, is champion self-awareness for young people, or I say young people, those that are building their career, encouraging them to know the value of what they are, who they are, what they're learning. It's so important, because self-awareness, which then links to self-esteem and all the rest of it, is critical to keep people and retain them in our industry. Certainly when the barriers sometimes can feel quite tough to overcome. So your career so far, you've been through industry, you've done in education, government policy, academia, leadership. You've got this squiggly line, which is fantastic, and I love it. A lot of young engineers probably need to see that and see that it's not just a straight line. So when you look at your journey, does it feel like a plan? Does it feel like a series of doors you've walked through? What does it feel like when you reflect on your career so far?
Yeah, it definitely feels like the road less traveled, and that's okay. And you're very right. Thank you for saying that. That students need to see that I didn't have it all planned out, or if I did, well, I can name 5 things that happened that I had to throw the plan away. But that doesn't mean you still don't move forward with things. Yeah, I kind of love my squiggly line. I came to find that I loved engineering and the intersection of the rest of the world, but also love it in terms of how do you look at engineering education? How do you look at education to engineering policy? So I think students have to realize they're taking that next step. It's great to have a long-term plan. I have students who are like, I want to work at Walt Disney World and as an Imagineer. Great, don't lose that. I want to work at Airbus and build airplanes. Whatever it is, have your dream, but know that just take the next step in it. You may not be able to perfectly plan out how you're going to get from A to B, but take that next step and be willing to take that next step. And back to what you said about building agency, I think some students are worried that they don't have enough yet as entering the company. I'm going to go in this interview and I just don't have enough. But companies know that you're coming right out of school. And they want to see your energy. They want to see the examples. They love to know that you want to build the next theme park. They're there to help you do that. And we have to help students realize, have a dream, but also know life is going to take you in different directions. And it's not always your workplace. We all have lives outside of it. And some of my right-hand turns have because something happened in my family that maybe it was my turn to take a job, but maybe it was someone else's turn to take a job, or maybe something happened with the kids or this or that. You have to fit life into these turns, and you have to make the best of what you can take. And you're usually surprised by the fact that people are willing to help you with those changes, willing to go to a company and say, hey, I need an adjustment of a different type of job, or I need a different shift. Ask those questions, give the explanations, and you never know where it's going to point you for your next level.
Of course. I love that the element of adaptability is something that I don't think we can ever talk about enough.
No.
We, as engineers, and we know it, how rigid our minds are and the process steps that we need to follow. But taking a step back and seeing that, the sum of the parts which equates to the engineer that you are so many capabilities which enable you to pivot left, right, up, down. It's okay to have a goal at the end that you're chasing, but the path to it can follow so many different turns. And I think it's so important to that. One of the things I talk about at the moment a lot is capability.
Yes.
Whether you're a PhD student, whether you're in your first and second year at university, or whether you're at college before going to university, you're building capabilities, and knowing those capabilities is so important. Exactly. Because you can tell people about those capabilities. And the moment that you mention a capability that someone needs, that's your link in there. So having that kind of flexibility, and as you mentioned, the pivot is really, really important. Certainly within the early careers stage of your career, Susan.
And what's great about saying know your capabilities is you also know what you don't have, so that when you're in the role and someone says, "Hey, there's an opening over here," and your gut might be, "Oh, that's kind of different. I'm not so sure I can do it." But you're saying change the conversation to, "That's a capability I don't have. I should say yes to that opportunity." And it reframes it from, okay, stay in my comfort zone, to, if I want to grow, I got to pull myself out to some new capabilities. So I like that.
Definitely. So let's dive straight into ASME, or as I knew it at university, or the where you have essentially built your whole career off of, American Society of Mechanical Engineers. Yes. How did you get in there first and foremost at the very, very start? Because you've been from every level almost, as I can see it.
Yeah. So ASME, like you said, it's the Mechanical Engineering Society, and I joined as a student member. A lot of us do, across the world, there's student sections, and they're there to start you to see what it means to be in this profession. Very much of the things that we've been talking about. The engineering school is going to give you the technical pieces. The societies having chapters there are part of your time as a student to learn, how do I start seeing what I need to enter into the profession? And so when I was a student, you do things like help set up the industry tours, or they have oral compositions where you present your work or your research. Even if you're not doing full research, there's opportunities to present projects that you've done. So the student sections are a way to start to say, oh, here's community in my profession, and here's some themes. And then for me, I just kind of kept taking the next step. Someone said, oh, how did you plan your way up to the top? And I'm like, I didn't. It was only about halfway through that journey did I say, oh, wait, maybe I can get up there and be president. At first, it was just, I love this. I'm going to do this next step. Or, someone made a phone call and said, Susan, we got a spot on this committee. Would you be interested in doing it? It's a couple hours a month. Hard to say no to a couple hours a month to help out the profession. So it's another way that your career is not a straight line. It's another way that your career gets capabilities. So I'll go back to that part of the conversation. One huge advantage, I think, that definitely helped me and has helped a lot of people that I know, you can take leadership responsibility, or you can take different project management responsibility in a professional society before you might get it in your job. And that goes on your resume. That goes in your capabilities list. And that certainly helped me not just get skills earlier than I got them in the workforce, but it helps with that nonlinearity when you want to connect some dots and, you have a partner who's moving, or you need to change something for kids' hours. Well, put your capabilities together in a different way, both from your work experience and your volunteer experience.
Love it. I'm a proud member of the Institute of Mechanical Engineers.
Yes.
And it's always been a society that I've always tapped into throughout my career while I was chasing chartership. But as I've built engineering career, I've reflected a lot on what it means to have been part of an institution.
Yep.
And no matter where you are in the UK, I always feel that there's something that you can relate to. Certainly when you're in London, where the headquarters is, etc. And then meeting each of the different trustees, etc., and their passion for continuing on what is a standard, but also an awareness of the profession. So for you to have got to president, what did that mean to you as someone that had built their way up?
Yes, and it gave me a voice to be able to advocate for the profession, to be able to advocate for the value of the empowerment that engineering brings to society, and very much for the students. There's a lot to say about helping more folks see that they have a place in engineering, as well as we talked about workforce development. What are those connections of engineering to everyone else, whether it's the workforce development pieces, whether it's standards and how that fits in with government work, whether that is product delivery and being out there for quality control of things. So many different things that a society can bring that to. At being there and being able to have a voice and say, all right, I'm able to advocate for things that are important: inclusive leadership, workforce development, students, standards, safety, sustainability across things, systems thinking of things, and even globalization of the profession. All these societies, we might mention each one's from our countries, but they all talk to each other. They know each other. They go to different conferences together. So it meant a lot to be able to do that and give back to the profession at that top level, and hopefully bring more people into seeing the value of how engineering just empowers everything that we do.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. When we spoke at first, I mean, like I said, I worked at Doosan Babcock, which was founded by, it was originally Babcock and Wilcox.
Yes.
Which essentially was one of the initial phases of ASME, with obviously the boiler design and Westinghouse, etc.
Yes.
I mean, the list of former presidents is so impressive. It must be a real honour to be alongside those.
It is. It very much is an honor. And I was the 7th woman president out of 144. So that was an honor as well, to be able to say that everyone can move up to the leadership. I think that's something important as well, that when you reach leadership, are you looking back and making sure you're helping others come along, and realize that the value that everyone can bring. And you're right, the societies all started for safety reasons. Pressure vessels were blowing up and they needed standards. That's what started a lot of these professional societies, and they now still serve that, but they also serve members as well. So it's really grown from that.
Absolutely. So this is a question I've been looking forward to asking you, because it sits right right at the heart of why I set up engineer a career in the first place. So I keep saying the same thing: capable engineers, students, graduates who have done the work, passed exams, completed projects, really harnessed all of their energy over a 3 to 5 year period, but struggling sometimes to articulate what they're capable of and seeing where they are and how they fit into industry. So in your view, from a gap point of view, the gap between universities and what they produce and what industry actually needs, do you think there's a challenge there? What's your take on that?
That is a huge and important question. I keep talking.
Well, I did say an hour, so we've got 41 minutes. I'm going on.
No, workforce development has become such an important thing to talk about. And I think for many decades, you can look back in history, there's sort of this assumed path, and folks went to engineering school and the companies picked them up. And so much more conversation now about where is that match? Where is industry involved with academia? And those paths now have to be a bit stronger, because what's happening is technology is growing so quickly, and things are much more systems interconnectedness of different pieces, that when you've got universities still very focused on the technical pieces and the different courses that you have, and industry saying, I want that, but I also want the adaptive thinkers, the ones who are able to see their engineering pieces as tools to apply to whatever I give them. So there has to be that handshake back and forth, and a little bit more of an articulation between education and industry to say, are we giving people the right pieces here? So it's an important question, and industry is starting to lean into that, as there's workforce shortages. And it's hard to use that word shortages. I'm not the expert on defining that, but it's not just a one number shortage. It's different places of mismatches of how they're training, and not just at 4-year schools. I think we have to answer that question from apprenticeships and blue collar and white collar and technical technicians and 2 years. The whole gamut has to be looked at, because the other place industry can help define is, where do we need people? What are the numbers and what are the spaces or the gaps in different places? Because I know in the US, there was a push for a while, we want everyone to be college ready. Well, that's not necessarily what's needed out there, nor is that best for everybody. We have to help folks find both the career level that matches them and the skill level that they're interested in, and where industry then needs those gaps. So it's a conversation of both the right skills to make sure that they match, the level of training that folks have, and then that adaptability to the future of what they need. So complicated issue that more and more people are talking about, which is really important. But then students have to recognize that while they want to put their skills out there, they got to resonate their adaptability, their resilience. I've helped a few students with resumes, and that's normally one of the first things I always say is, because they'll write on their classwork, and they put the very standard. And I'll say to them, I said that looks great, but they know you took statics and dynamics and calculus. That can come off. Like we got that. You need to put on here, what was the innovative stuff that did? What is the pieces that you have? And I think we have to respond to the fact that so many more colleges have entrepreneurial clubs or consulting clubs, or different, they want connections with the business school. We have to start recognizing that students are demanding something a little bit different to tie with the engineering. And maybe it goes back to, we started this whole thing of being at liberal arts schools, where there's the pieces around engineering, and we have to lean into that a little bit more, because students are asking for those pieces. Now, definitely people are going to hear this and say, there is no more room in an engineering curriculum. I get that. But there's definitely ways that you can craft your capstone design, or back to those industry experiences. It doesn't have to, in the course of those years of training, it doesn't all have to be at the college. Can we work at stronger internships? Can we work with stronger apprenticeships? Can we work with stronger 2-year programs that tie a community college with industry? And that's part of what a professional society as well is right now doing. I know all of them, the English one, the US one, we're looking at trying to be that conduit and that connector to help, because everyone's sitting in our professional societies. Can we help connect those pieces and make sure those conversations are happening?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the emphasis on the institutions and the societies cannot be overplayed because of the awareness that they've got in terms of numbers who are studying certain courses, but
Yep.
also in terms of what the demand is, because ultimately institutions and societies usually have that dual connection with industry and education. I think you touched on a couple of really good points there, and by no means would I ever try and simplify this challenge. It's almost a wee bit reassuring that hearing the same challenges in America as it is in the UK and certainly in Europe. But I think we've touched on a couple of the points already in terms of like when you're a student being involved with societies and being involved with.
Mm-hmm.
There's a number of different ways you can get involved with societies, etc., across university, but not every student understands the importance of that.
Right.
And it goes back to that conversation around, my parent helped me see engineering, or my dad, and the most common kind of starting point is someone close to you that guides you into your career. But for the person that doesn't have that, then what's the knock-on impact of that when they then pick engineering, they then get into university and maybe expect that I'm going to get a job at the end of it. So I think there's definitely a place that sits in between academia and industry to help guide that connection. And maybe selling engineering career here too much, but what I'm trying to say is ultimately not everyone knows what you and I know, but also not everyone in education sees what's in industry, and it's just about that connection piece between the two. I think it's so important now. I think incredibly important, purely because you hear a lot around we should go into schools and talk about engineering more, but if we can't fix the bottleneck at the front end, which is ultimately the supply and demand, you could get a lot of people coming through and not getting into industry, and that's where ultimately I focus a lot of my time. And interested to hear how that would kind of correspond from what you see, Susan.
Yeah, well, and it's not part of that balance of the right number of people in is giving students, though, the chance when they're in high school, before they're making that post-secondary decision of what is important to them and where do they want to go. Are they at a position that they want an apprenticeship? They're ready to get in, and that's what their skill base is and what's important to them. Let's get them into an apprenticeship. Or do they want to go to a 2-year program and get certified to be a technician on certain equipment where there is a really high demand and wonderfully living wages, if not better than living wages, within those 2-year programs, and then the ones that are interested in the 4-year program. So part of the conversation needs to be earlier with the students of them understanding, and there's a huge gap in their understanding what that means. You ask a student what advanced manufacturing means, no idea. You and I both immediately are thinking of these robots with assembly lines, like we can picture it. Most people can't picture that. So when you say to a student, oh, look, you have options, what does that mean? And so part of us going in and talking to the next generation has to be those very realistic conversation of what is these jobs that are potential, and then what are the many different pathways that are there, and help a student figuring out which is the right pathway for you. And then for the students, when they're in there and we're going in as professionals talking about them, you're right, teaching students that involvement in the professional societies, and you can be a member in 2-year programs too in these things. Like it's not exclusive to the 4-year programs as well, that being a member of these are building that network, are giving you those skills outside of the technical skills. And so we as a society actually have sessions with the student leaders of the universities to kind of say, okay, we're going to give you some suggestions of what would be really great for you guys to do in your colleges. Pizza parties are great, study party, I don't want to knock all the stuff that they usually do, but let's also nudge those to say, have you called some engineers in to come talk about it? Or, do you have a resume review session or whatever it needs to be that they get there to do? But this whole, the pathways and the many different pathways students can get into these careers, we have to help them understand what those mean. And my daughter is about to graduate with a nursing degree. And so this, what do you do with the rest of your life, is very relevant in my head, because she just got a job offer and we're all celebrating and all that good stuff. But there were things they did in healthcare and them getting ready in their healthcare careers that she came home with all this different information. Well, Mom, this is how this works with this licensing, and this is how we go from there. And I was like, all right, well, to go school, they were helping to connect the dots. And some engineering schools are good at that, and some are not. And to see how in healthcare they were helping with just that little bit of navigation and what all that means meant a lot for me to realize, okay, she's going to get established well. Now let's
Yeah.
go back to engineering and say, okay, some of you are doing this well, and some of you, in some cases, I get it. Some of the big schools, there's a lot of students to help that through. But how do we as a society help them manage?
Definitely. Absolutely. I've said this before in the podcast, but I always remember the first time where I encroached or came across the Institute of Mechanical Engineers. It was in a lecture. I remember one of the reps coming in and talking about the free membership, signing up that day. Was that 16 years later, still being a member.
Yes.
And it's almost like the opening line I have with students. Are you a member of your society, whether it's the IChemE, whether it's IEEE, whether you name it, and then also the likes of the Energy Institute, who partner with Engineer Career, I share about their free student membership, because it just unlocks people, networks, people which ties into networks, events, but also the themes and what's relevant today. If you don't chase the news like I do.
Exactly. Well, and that's part of interviews too, is just having a sense of, you show up, when a student shows up, can they talk about things like design for sustainability, design for manufacturing, having a sense of those pieces versus just a technical road, which, okay, we know you all get that. You're not going to graduate without those technical pieces. Can we help you see what's relevant within the society? So I love that all the work that you're doing of getting those words out, because it's very true.
It's all part of it.
Yeah.
One of the points I ask a lot of my guests is mentors and role models, and no one goes along a career without the right support mechanisms. So I'm maybe going to ask in a slightly different way from you, given the seniority of your position within ASME. Is what do you see as what is a good mentor? What is a good role model in your eyes?
Yeah. A good mentor for me is someone who's just there to listen and hear what you need and help you get to that next stage. And it's interesting. I feel like my relationship with mentoring has changed over the years. So when you're student and younger, it's a bit broader. It's more of the questions we're talking about of where's my path and how do I get ready for this? And you need your mentors. And I feel like those of us, when we worked in academia, part of our job was to teach students how to work with mentors. I know when students came in the door, I didn't want to be mom. That was not my job. But my job was to kind of guide them to say, all right, this is how you start to be part of a professional community. This is how you communicate as a professional. Oh, okay, you're not sure how to. I don't know how many emails I wrote with students who came in the door and said, I got this note from a potential internship. What in the world do I write back? Like, and just helping it, we laugh at it, but it's basic. Like, we haven't taught them how to do that, So we early on, that mentoring is just getting those skills to be a professional. And when you work with students, you're doing a lot of that. Now I feel like that the mentors that I have are a bit more in pieces. So I do have a couple people I talk to about the broad career things, but a lot of times there are these mini mentors everywhere, and there's nothing wrong with mini mentors either. So in my case, it's a couple of past supervisors who are really good at particular things. And when I face that thing, in the back of my mind, I'll be like, oh, he would have been really good in this situation. I don't know what to do. Oh, wait, maybe I'm going to call him and say, hey, how does this work? It's okay that we all have these mini mentors as we go through things, because we're just not experts in every piece. So how do we keep using mentors to do that? Or I've called them in when I've needed to change jobs. So as we become mentors, we still need to have mentors, but I think we have to look back, and being a good mentor is really that listening and saying, where are you in your career? How do I help you take that next step? How do I build your agency? How do I help you realize that your confidence can grow, or you're in the right spot, or make a difficult decision that's based on some parameters that you've just never had to make a decision for?
Definitely. So if you were to go back and look back on your career before, getting your degree and before, way before everything you've done in your career, what would you tell a young Susan? What would you advise a younger self at the start of your engineering profession?
Yeah, I think I'd say a few things. First of all, trust yourself. You're going to develop your skills and your instincts as an engineer. I think a lot of engineering students start out because, oh yeah, Uncle Joe was an engineer, or your grandfather was an engineer, or your math and science teachers told you to do it. But then you take those few classes and you're like, ooh, this is different. Like, where am I going with this? Trust yourself. You're going to build those instincts. And then part of what we said before, just kind of keep going. there's all days. I mean, I laugh telling you about, remember and all be in the computer lab with the juniors, like we just kept going and we used the people around us. You're going to get through this career by just taking that next step and take that next step. And then at the same time, see everybody as human around you. And what I mean by that is, if you're nice to everyone, if you see everybody as part of your network, that grows you as well. If you see the people around you as valuable folks who are going to be there to help you on the good days, to help you on the bad days, you help them. Community and that humanity at work, I think really grows an organization as well. And learn to be a part of someone who is someone at the workplace that people want to work with, that they want to see as someone who's going to help, or who is not afraid to ask for help. Keep that humanity in your job. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, that means a lot, sharing that, Susan. That's invaluable advice. I think something we could all take on, because ultimately, for all the best form of ourselves and the best form of ourselves for others, then it can only be better for everyone in society. And that might sound quite deep, but it's also true.
Yeah.
We all know it from the good working environments we've been in. So what's next professionally for you? What's the professional goals of the future, Susan?
Yeah.
What have you not achieved?
So I recently started my own company, which is an interesting adventure. I don't know if years ago someone said, "Oh yeah, you're going to do that someday," but and I'm very new in it. So I am learning a lot about all the different sides of setting this up. It's in the K-12 STEM space, trying to work with associations and on outreach and some pieces of workforce development, some pieces of inclusive leadership, but being there to help other nonprofits and associations build their capacity within this space. And then part of, always wanting to learn is I'm actually back in school. I am getting my educational doctorate in organizational learning and leadership, which is very different than engineering. And there are days that I really am seeing things from different perspectives. But it's great to get back with it's all for professionals. So we're all out there working professionals to do this. And it's been exciting to start to see perspectives from different places. So it's okay, later in your career to say, you know what, I want to learn and see how I keep getting myself to the next level. So for right now, I'm working to build the capacity of others, and we'll see. Maybe one day I'll go back and work with students too, because I enjoy that as well.
Love it. Good. The squiggly line continues. I love it, Susan.
The squiggly line, yeah.
So before I ask the final question for you, is there a part of engineering right now that you find fascinating? You might read up on, not having worked in, or is there a part of engineering that you think that's really, really exciting? A younger Susan would have maybe interested in maybe working in it.
Yeah. So I think it's just, engineering has always really been interconnected. And, I liked robotics because it was the mechanical and the electrical and pieces. And now these questions they're global, and they have to bring in manufacturability and sustainability and human-centered design and all these different pieces. And I just think engineers are the ones who are going to be able to look at these really complex, interconnected, interdisciplinary pieces and figure out how we're all going to solve those problems and move forward. So that's the core of what engineering is, isn't it? So it just seems, I think studying something more like a systems and understanding how that goes, I think is just fascinating. And some folks are like, my gosh, it gets more complicated. I think that's exciting. I think that's the challenge to kind of look at and say, how do engineers really help with these growing complicated problems?
Yeah, absolutely. The other day, obviously, a few weeks ago, Artemis took off, and
yes.
It was one of those moments that I'm sure a lot of engineers, and maybe those who aren't engineers, sat and watched the videos afterwards. And for me, watching it, and it was a video that was sent, and it was a plane flying by and seeing Artemis essentially in the distance.
Oh, wow.
And at that moment, I thought that is, I mean, I'm not in aerospace, but I'm watching it and I was thinking, all I think of is, how is that happening? What's going on? But all the engineering involved with that,
yes.
The years it's taken, and I just thought that is why I love engineering. Not as someone, like I said, who's not in aerospace, but
right.
Just watching that and the feeling it gave. And I'm sure so many people felt that way.
Absolutely.
Those who are engineers who have maybe evolved into management roles, who don't do the technical now, think, wow, that is just real stuff.
It's real stuff, and it is exciting. And oh yeah, I watched it as well. A lot of us watched it, and we've all been watching videos and sitting there going, just get your head around the fact that they went around the moon. Like, we just haven't done that for decades, and it's absolutely fascinating. And there is a beautiful piece of inspiring people too. Even if students don't want to be aerospace, if they want to do something else, to stand there and say, I can be a part of that complexity of that robot, of that rocket going off, and all the different experiments that are going on up there. It's fascinating, and it's amazing to watch. And it reminds us that good things really are still going on, that we can solve these complicated problems, and it excites everybody. So, oh yeah, no, that's a beautiful moment. I think we're all going to watch them splash down here tomorrow, right? I think they return.
That's right.
So that's
amazing.
Really exciting.
Definitely. Well, Susan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This has been amazing. We probably could go on forever, and maybe when I take a trip over the pond, I'll we'll maybe arrange a coffee.
Definitely.
And continue the conversation.
Definitely.
But thank you so much. So finally, what keeps you passionate about engineering?
Because engineering is about possibility and potential. Engineering is empowering for us to do what we want to achieve. The things that we create empower other people. How do you not love that? So it's amazing.
Love it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Josh. This was so much fun. I love what you're doing. Good luck with everything.
Likewise, continue doing what you're doing too. And this has been awesome. Thanks a lot, Susan.
Great. Thanks, Josh.